Hello everyone, welcome to Trending Topics. It's the last panel of MIPCOM. Thanks everyone for coming along. I know it's been a busy week, it's been an intense week. The fatigue is starting to set in, but we're going to try and keep you entertained and inspired for the next hour with the biggest trends that we've seen coming out of social media during MIPCOM and MIP Junior. And we'll be discussing them with this fabulous panel of guests we've got here. And they have also chosen each one topic which we're going to spend most of our time discussing. So, first up to my left is Julian. Who are you, Julian?
I'm Julian Newby. I'm the editor-in-chief of the MIPCOM MIPTV publications, which come under my company, which is Boutique Editions, of which I'm editorial director.
And in 2 words, how was your market?
Full on.
Great. Yeah. Sandrine, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Hi, I'm Sandrine. I've been spending 25 years in North America. I'm from France originally, and lately I joined TFO, which is the podcaster in Toronto, and we are reaching the francophones all over the world, especially the kids, 2 to 12. And the market has been forever busy. It's my 21 market. I feel old, but at the same time very disruptive.
So lots of exciting things still happening.
Yes.
Great.
Well, you know, there is a lot of exciting things happening, and especially now in kids programming. I'm sure some of you were at MIPCOM Junior, and you know, the innovation of content is hot, ever hot, and lots to talk about, especially AR and VR.
Great. Well, we're gonna come on to that later. Let's just introduce the panel first. Lisa.
Hello, I'm a producer, that's why I've lost my voice. So my name's Lisa. I have my own company in London called Black Meteor, and I consult for all sorts of media brands, including NBC, BBC, The Guardian, and brands getting into media.
Great. And how is your market in 2 words?
Inspiring and fun.
Great. That's what we like to hear. Guy, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Guy Bisson. I am research director with a London-based firm of market analysts and media commentators. We specialize in the global television business with, of course, a content focus.
And how is your market in 2 words?
Always fascinating.
You can also say bad things as well, if you like. Marjorie could say a bad thing.
I might say bad things, or no, I'm just kidding. So I'm Marjorie. I'm a presenter for France 24, France 24, and I'm covering mostly American politics, which is not the topic today, but I'm also covering innovation, which means nothing and everything at the same time. Just meaning whenever a field could be politics, could be the environment, could be culture, could be the media, it could be the industry, is actually disrupted, I'm interested in, and I'm covering it. And I've been lucky enough to be a moderator for MIPCOM, MIPTV, and MIDEM for the past 4 seasons, I guess.
Yep. And you've moderated a couple of keynotes.
Yeah, great keynotes actually yesterday. We had Ricky and Daniel from Facebook on the Grand Auditorium to tell us more about what is a watch program when it comes to Facebook. And we also covered a lot of different trends with Dominique Delport from Vivendi and Davos.
Okay, we'll get onto that later as well. There's lots to get through, so let's crack on. The first bit of the presentation is we've been scouring the whole of the internet to pick out the biggest trending topics that have come up in conversations on social media about MIPCOM and MIP Junior. We've been using a tool called Sysomos to do this, and it tells us, for example, that across all social media, all trackable social media, MIPCOM got nearly 30,000 mentions on social media in the past week, which is a great result. I'm usually happy with about 25,000, and it's up over 50% on last MIPCOM. Thing is, though, that's to be taken with a pinch of salt, because sometimes, because mentions don't tell the whole picture in social media, though we did notice quite a few a bit of suspicious activity about to do with World Food Day, which had nothing to do with MIPCOM. So that would have pushed the number of mentions up a bit, but we managed to exclude them for this analysis. here is this is one of my favorite data visualizations. This is the keywords that are associated with MIPCOM on social media over the past week. Now, obviously, they're the ones you'd expect to see, like Fremantle Media, content, Viaplay, cachette, distribution, etc. I thought that there is an elephant in the room, which is that word right there over on the right, not cocaine, Weinstein. I was just wondering if the panel had noticed a lot of conversations about the topic of women in entertainment. Obviously, it was a big topic at Women in Entertainment lunch on Monday. Julian, have you been? Where do you think this conversation is going?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think many of us might have met Harvey Weinstein.
What is the right way to pronounce it?
He pronounces it Weinstein, but
Okay.
the proper German is you pronounce the I after the E, so it should be Weinstein, and the word is stone, Weinstone, so, or like Flintstone. So I knew him. I know him. A lot of people here do. And there was a lot of talk about, oh, well, I had no idea. I knew I didn't like him, but I didn't know that stuff was going on, because I am in the film business a bit, but principally television. And I think the film industry, I've had a lot of conversations, as we all have had over this week and prior to that. And I think the film industry is particular in this regard. And it's partly because, and there's never any excuse for bullying or bad behaviour, whoever you are, it's because if you're an actor or an actress working on a film, it is technically, officially, your last movie. You don't know that you're making another one. And it's very, very scary. And it creates all sorts of imbalanced behaviour. And it brings the bully out of people. It brings the pervert out of people. So Hollywood is getting a rough ride, and I think we should distinguish that from TV.
Not just Hollywood, actually.
Well, no, not just Hollywood. It's true. There are other industries. People behave like this all over the world. The target is on Hollywood because these people are famous. But one interesting thing that I've been saying in these discussions is that in our industry, in the television series industry, there are a lot of powerful women. It's great. It's not as great as it should be, but there are a lot of female CEOs, and we're quite used to that. It's not like that in Hollywood. It's still very Neanderthal, and it's an environment that can allow this stuff to happen. And you know, I've worked at the Cannes Film Festival for well over 20 years, and things go on, meetings happen in hotel rooms, and people are left alone to their own devices. They're not working for a huge company like Fremantle or Endemol Shine or whatever. Every film is a small business in itself, and people behave weirdly, and they're panicking and they're scared, and it's going to end. And this brings out behaviours that, you know, we all hope that we don't do ourselves if we can possibly, you know, avoid it and know how to behave. So I think I'm rambling, but don't punish the entertainment industry for this. This is everywhere. And powerful white men need to think again about the way they behave, I think.
Okay, but how I suppose the constructive approaches are, does the panel think that things are going to change now and that things will be put in place for women to be treated better in general in entertainment, be that TV or Hollywood?
I think one of the most important things is that everyone's talking about it.
Yeah.
So if you are ever caught in that situation, the more that we all talk about it and talk about how it's not acceptable behaviour, then if you're caught in that situation, you'll be able to act with more self-confidence and realise that, you know, it's not on. And I think that's what's been really good about the intense conversations that have been going on in the last week especially.
I also think that it's a wake-up call for women. I think women need to be together more than ever and help each other. And I work with many wonderful, brilliant women in New York, Montreal, Toronto, and Los Angeles. And there is ambition, of course, and there is individualism as well. But, you know, more than ever nowadays, we need to be together. And this is the year for women. I'm very excited, and it's not just in Hollywood, it's in our industry everywhere. It was in Montreal today, 2 people, very well-known hosts, have been let go today in Quebec. And it's a big wave and of awareness.
For the same reasons?
For the same reasons.
So that's a good thing. There is a wind of change.
Yeah, wake-up call for sure, but I mean, it's just one part of the iceberg here. I mean, it's happening every single day, every single time, in every single industry, in every single place, in the street, I mean, in companies. This has to come to an end, definitely.
I think a wider issue, there's much discussion about who did and didn't speak out, but I think it's a reflection of when you put too much power in the hands of one person or one social platform, what can happen and what cannot happen, more importantly, that no one stood up for so long.
Okay.
Are you going to go on to diversity later?
Yes.
Good, because Lenny Henry did something fantastic yesterday, and I think it's worth talking about that, and it relates to this.
We will get on to diversity.
But you know, one thing to say, it's all positive.
Yeah.
What's
agreed.
happening as a result is all positive. Yeah, agreed. Let's crack on. So here this is I'm going to really quickly go through the hashtags that came out the most with regards to MIPTV. E1 won. They got the 3 top hashtags on Twitter. That means over 10% of all the tweets about MIPCOM were either hashtag E1TV or the hashtags of their shows, Burden of Truth and ICE. And that's just quite simply because they promoted the shows very efficiently on social media. They organized Twitter Q&As. They brought the stars. Very simple best practice to follow if you're bringing a show to MIPTV or MIPCOM in the future. If you can bring the stars, if you can organize events with them, do it. It's going to be really beneficial for your shows. Next, and this is a funny one, supermarket sweep, because Fremantle, this is the second, number 2 hashtag, because Fremantle announced just before MIPCOM that they have acquired the global rights to supermarket sweep, that was probably mostly speak to British people here. But if you look at there are over 500 reactions to this tweet. Most of them were people sharing GIFs of people pushing trolleys down the aisles really fast in this show, which is, if you don't know it, you have to run around a supermarket and collect everything you can. Perhaps suggesting there's still life in shows that we thought had it.
Polite.
No, well, we haven't heard of supermarket sweep for a while, so that's my point. Also, old properties coming back. We saw this with MIP Junior, because the thing that people were talking about the most at MIP Junior was Thomas the Tank Engine. But yeah, they were talking about the fact there's a new Thomas the Tank Engine show, Thomas and Friends. But also there were a lot of quite a few unhappy Thomas the Tank Engine friends who were expressing their dismay that 2 of their favorite male characters have been removed from this new version of Thomas the Tank Engine and replaced by 2 women. So there's diversity going on in the tank engine world as well, which is great.
Thank goodness, at last.
About time. But
James,
I have a better...
you know that in French we say la locomotive, so Thomas could definitely be a girl.
That's right. Well, la bière, or that's an example. But I've got another diversity example coming up later. 4th and 5th were Scam, which is the show that the guys from Facebook presented yesterday, which is their first fully original show. And Facebook Watch, which is the name of the platform, which is Facebook's YouTube rival. It's not when I first heard it, Facebook have got a new watch like Apple Watch. No, it's their YouTube rival. Really interesting that this came out and Snapchat's didn't really. Their keynote was just as interesting, but they didn't come out in the hashtags for some reason. That's a picture of the show as presented yesterday. Fresh TV, and this is an opportunity to talk. Fresh TV is always in the top trending topics, and there are two big sessions presented by Virginia at each MIP. One is about formats, one is about fiction. It was the fiction. Sorry, no, it was the formats show that made the most buzz on social media, and this is why I want to bring on to diversity. This is a show called By the Way, which is a dating format where the person who is dating is bisexual, so they can either go for a man or a woman. They have to choose at the end. This is a good example, a good opportunity to talk, I think, about diversity. So we had the first diversity awards at MIPCOM this year. Do you think, the panel, that that diversity, sort of beyond the sort of women in entertainment topic, is becoming more and more recognized as a need? Lenny Henry was talking about the need for a tax break for diversity. What do you think of that, Lisa?
I think that's great. I think the more we recognise the opportunity the more opportunities we give to more faces being on screen, I think is really, really important. And I also think it encourages originality, creativity, and I also think it just connects us all. So I'm a big fan of it all. I know we have tax breaks for particular things in Australia production that have really, really helped. I know there's a lot of different initiatives like the Fempire initiatives with A&E. Like there's, I also know that there's some with Indigenous ones in Australia. I've heard that there are in Canada, and I'm a big fan for more diversity because of the creativity that comes out.
Julian, you said you wanted to mention something.
Well, yeah,
Henry.
Yeah, Lenny did a brilliant thing. He's a very much loved person from my country, the UK. He's an absolute national treasure, but has such a talent for saying really important big things in a very small, funny way. And if anyone was at the session yesterday where he was talking about diversity in front and behind the camera, and he did talk about a tax break for diversity. I love him. I agree with everything he says. I don't think the world needs any more tax breaks, but that's just my political viewpoint at the moment. But he was standing on the stage, and he asked all able-bodied white men to stand up, which was such an incredible thing to do, because it immediately made everybody think about the imbalance everywhere, in all businesses, and this business and other businesses, and they had to stand up. So suddenly, they kind of felt like they were the spotlight was on them. They were in the minority. They had to think, oh my God, what do I do now? And then he asked them to go and he asked every able-bodied white man who was standing to go and stand next to someone who was sitting, which could be a woman, a black person, an Asian person, whatever, and then take a selfie and tweet it out.
Was that Lenny Henry who did that, or was it?
Yes, Lenny Henry.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, yeah.
They did it, or they did.
Yeah, they did it together, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I think if you're told to stand up and think about what you are, it's very important. Whether you're, an able-bodied white man, when you're in a crowd, you have to be made to think about what you are, who you are, whether you are automatically the most important person or the majority.
And more than ever in children programming, for the first time this year, we're producing a show, an animated show for preschooler, where one character has no gender. And for the first 26 episodes, it's going to be referred as he or she, I don't know the order, and then the last 26 as a she or he. And he has a very female and male name at the same time. And it is very exciting, because diversity is not just one thing. I'm very happy for the women. Yes, we need to be much more present as producers, content provider, as talents, but diversity on all levels, diversity for kids as well, and diversity so that all the people are represented.
Yeah.
And it's as much in front of the screen as behind the screen as well. So the it has to be a change that happens with the storytellers and the producers as well as the faces we see.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of positive discrimination? Because it can be applied to the women issue as to the diversity issue. It's the same thing. Fleur Pellerin on Monday was talking about there's a law that's come into effect in France since January where 40% of all companies' board members have to be women, and she was saying that you can have all the good intentions you want, but sometimes you need to force things. Do you think?
I think it's pretty good. In Canada, we have exactly the same for the funding, the CMF, FMC in French. And, they want to have women, like at least 40% as well, in either behind the camera or in front of the camera. And it's about point, but I think it's no discrimination. I think it's really giving chance.
Positive discrimination.
Positive, yeah.
But what you said is that's something they want to do, or it's something that they're imposing?
It's established right now.
Okay.
Well, the problem is, come back to the question of quotas. I mean, it's always like a controversial debate, because you would really try to think that you don't need to impel quotas or any percentage of diversity or women inside board members, but at the end of the day, you do have to. Because, it's not going to change if you don't impel, if you don't actually push for it and have the exact number being actually put together. And we have to do it. Now, I would be really amazed to see by the end of the year, once, this quota thing is really impelled on French companies, how many of them are really going to go for the 40% and how many of them are going to go for the fine?
Yeah.
The issue came up were you at the Pulse screening, the Australian hospital drama that was brought here, which I think is fantastic. And it was up for a diversity award. And we spoke about that on the panel after the screening, or before the screening, can't remember. And we referenced that. I asked the producers and the actors about that, and they said, yes, it is. It's up for a diversity award because all the people are in it are different from each other, but that's a typical hospital. If you go into any hospital anywhere in the world, the people are from everywhere, all races, all ages, all creeds. And they were slightly uncomfortable about being awarded or being nominated because they said, we didn't contrive this, we didn't do this to get points, we did it because it's a real story. And I think diversity, if you're thinking about that, it's very important to just tell real stories. If you tell real stories, diversity will be automatically built into your work.
And it definitely resonates with the question that we might deep dive into during, the further trendy topics we chose, all of us. But it's definitely like trying to pay more and closer attention to your audiences. Your audiences know diversity. They live it every single day. So why don't you actually show them some of their real life? Try to better understand them, try to better learn from them, try to create better content for them.
Okay, let's try and think about authenticity then as well as quotas. It's not the whole answer. Okay. There was also the European Film Forum that came up in the trending topics, but we are on Twitter, but we are getting behind time, so I'm just going to nip past that one and get to Britannia, which was our world premiere screening, which was also one of the top hashtags on Twitter, and also leads us on to the next part of the panel, where I'm going to ask each speaker to talk about a theme that they have chosen themselves. So Britannia is a drama, isn't it, Julien?
It's a drama.
Yes. Why did you choose to speak about drama?
Well, drama has been a very important subject at these markets and in the industry generally for a number of years now. You said you've been to 21 MIPCOMs, I think you said at the beginning of this session. This is my 28th, which is quite a scary thought. When I first started coming to these events, the dramas that were for sale were American or South American. So Latin American telenovelas or you know, white men dramas from North America, and that was pretty much it. Look at this MIPCOM, and it's incredible. It's turned on its head. The trend started 8-10 years ago with, I suppose, something like Homeland. That was quite an important development because America found an Israeli drama, took it to the States, remade it, and it was a massive hit. Then the Nordic noir stuff started to happen, the killing and so on and so on. We all know what happened there. And that started to sort of unleash creativity and unleash thought in the minds of broadcasters who thought, well, hold on a minute, yeah, it's coming from Israel, that's coming from Norway, that's coming from Sweden. And they, you know, suddenly the barriers came down to the point where, and then MIP drama screenings started a few years ago, and you know, it's always important at these events to consider all countries, all nations, all races and all creeds. So the dramas that were being screened would not normally have been screened 8, 10, 12, 15 years ago. And this week, I just noticed, you know, that the bubble had completely burst, and so we've got Russian dramas, Japanese dramas. I don't know if anyone was at the Carrara screening in this room about the Japanese painter, Hokusai, which was absolutely extraordinary. And I did a similar panel here afterwards, and it's the first time it's happened to me. I was on stage with an actor and a producer and a director, and we had 2 interpreters standing behind us because none of them spoke English. So it was like a 3-way interview, and it was absolutely fascinating. And I know that 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 14 years ago, people would have walked out. They wouldn't have been, there was, oh, what the hell's going on here? I'm out, I'm off. But they were mesmerized. And I think, you know, that comes back to diversity in a way. We're not just watching dramas with Larry Hagman as a bad man taking money and treating women badly. The stories are opening up, that they're about all kinds of people and from all kinds of places, and the creativity is coming from different parts of the world, and it's fantastic. And of course, we can't ignore Netflix, that, you know, needs headline dramas and is buying them from everywhere because they can and they have to.
But the point is that all of these dramas are in their country's original language.
Yeah.
It's the case for Carrara, for Trotsky,
yeah.
for Netflix does things like offers you like Brazilian series to Western audiences.
Well, actually,
how do you explain it, Julian? Is it because the platforms like Netflix are opening up a massive long tail, or?
Well, I think it's to do with the explosion of channels, the number of channels, and it doesn't matter how many dating formats or talent formats people come up with, which make the headlines. People in their homes watching TV want to lose themselves in a story. And they're hard to do. You know, making long-form drama is difficult, expensive. It has to be convincing, it has to be authentic, as you were talking about. And people have to look elsewhere now because it's not all coming out of the UK and America. Well, it is, but they need more than that. So there's that element of it. Also, I think people were always happy to read subtitles. It's just that broadcasters, and particularly commercial broadcasters, thought it was, you know, it was going to be the death of their channels. But people are more intelligent than we give them credit for, and people watched The Killing, and they were absolutely mesmerised. And another little trigger in this trend was Lillehammer, the Norwegian. That was a Netflix original, actually. Norwegian.
Netflix's first original.
Yeah, it was, and it was the first entertainment, because it wasn't a hard-hitting drama, it was a slightly whimsical drama about crime and stuff, but it was the first, I think, to be bilingual. So the Norwegians spoke Norwegian, and the American dude spoke American English, and I think that opened up a lot.
just adding like some information and context to it. Last time I was actually covering Netflix in Los Gatos at their headquarters. They were mentioning that they came from 7 different languages on the platform to 27 right now, and they have what they call 75, I guess, language assets, which is merely like the differences you're going to make between French Parisian and French Québécois, for instance, and regional languages, which is really a really great asset, though, to make a difference when you're actually trying to enjoy an original content.
I think it's telling, if you look at Netflix's upcoming drama slate, stuff that's about to be on, half of it is produced outside the USA, usually in a non-English speaking country. So I don't think we can underestimate the influence of global platforms in opening the eyes of the world to the quality of non-English and non-American drama.
And we have to mention Russia, because there was a special focus on Russia this week. And I don't know if any of you were able to see any of the content that was shown, but it was stunning. And you know, if you think back to Russian cinema in the early 20th century, it was triumphant. It was remarkable. You know, Eisenstein, and then we stopped thinking about it. This liberation has allowed us to start thinking about talent and creativity from everywhere, and I just think it's a wonderful thing, and it's a big contributor to diversity in the industry.
Great. Moving on to Sandrine's theme, also another example of creativity in the industry. You wanted to talk about kids' immersive content. Is that something that you noticed more and more of at MIP Junior and MIPCOM?
Yeah, and first of all, that MIPCOM Junior was a good crew, I think, a very good crew, as we say when we love wine. I think there was many wonderful properties. I mean, I was checking the 30 most watched screen list yesterday, and most of them are just amazing, but it's all about brand. It's really all about brand, and also educational content is coming big, coming disruptive educational content. And why? Because we have a lot of tools available. It's still a big evolution. I think, VR, we all know that it's kind of difficult to use that tool for kids, because, kids are not allowed, I think from 12 or 13 years old, because it can really damage the brain. But then you have AR, which I think the possibilities are endless. Ourselves in Toronto, we have a studio.
Sorry, Sandrine, could you just explain what AR is to the?
Well, because it's augmented reality, so you really have great creative. It's about storytelling. I think kids can also be the producers. More and more AR is used for digital component. Whenever we produce a series, the digital component will be with AR, and it gives the kid to really create its own story. So
it's when you see virtual elements in the real world.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah. And we do have a studio downtown Toronto. It's called the Louvre, and it's mixing all of this, and we're servicing with other co-producers. We're a broadcaster, but at the same time, we're trying to be a big content provider. And it's giving a lot of freedom, lots of freedom to creator, and lots of freedom for kids as well, because now they have the tools to really put their imagination into the screen, into their creativity.
What's the best example of AR content for kids you've seen recently? Here or not?
There is plenty, and maybe you can help me out here.
Maybe. Well, no, actually, so the AR mention is really interesting, though, because so VR will definitely be like this immersive experience, because you have to put an headset on. With AR, I mean, you can use your daily devices, like your smartphone, your tablet, and you're definitely trying to put some virtual elements into real life. Another part of the technology that is really used nowadays when it comes to education and kids' content is what we call holography, and it's been developed specifically by Microsoft through HoloLens, which are actually glasses, but they're not that immersive or something. They're not going to mix with your brain so much as VR. And they're specifically developing this kind of content because they want you to be able to use it in the classroom, for instance. And the way that you can literally, like, if you're learning about dinosaurs, for instance, you can literally touch dinosaurs. You can see them unfolding. And it's...
Sinking Ship actually is doing a lot of that in Toronto, and you know, that guy and all of his team, JJ Johnson, is really a young producer, and he's mixing the reality with AR, and now they are able to touch the dinosaur on their app, and it's, I mean, imagine a 5 years old. It's just...
Sorry, how do you touch the dinosaur?
Well, you know, the dinosaur comes alive, and you know, you can even pet him. It's just, I wish I could be a kid at this time, you know, like.
Yeah, maths and science it wasn't the same when I was learning, that's for sure. But yeah, the HoloLens is a really exciting thing to watch because it's just going to make, you know, bring some more context to your everyday situations and be able to learn and immerse and stick to all that kind of stuff, which I think is great.
Yeah, but HoloLens is very much of V1, isn't it? When you try it, you can only see like a window like that in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
So it's got to get better,
yeah,
smaller, right?
Absolutely, and the experience is supposed to be to get better and better, of course. But the other part of it is that we've been like debating for so long on this question, either an industrial pattern and business model when it comes to VR. I'm not sure it is, but with AR and with holography, I do think there is.
Oh yes.
But when it comes to VR and AR for children, I mean, if we're primarily in the entertainment world, entertainment is typically passive. You sit back, and you can actually, and parents know this, that you can actually leave your children to be entertained. VR and AR, they need supervision.
You need to be proactive.
Yeah. So in terms of a critical mass, a mass market, how do you? What does that supervision element do to the commercial proposition?
Well, I think it's totally immersive, actually. Parents, it's actually gathering parents and kids to do an activity together. And especially for educational, you can really explain math. For the first time in my life, I work in educational. I always work with the big brand, DreamWorks, Hasbro, Sony. For the first time, I just joined, you know, a little entity doing just educational. And let me tell you, it's like I have a second life. I think educational is actually coming back big, coming back disruptive, and we have the tools. I agree with you. I think there is an evolution. We need to be very certain that the tools are great and the consequences are going to be positive for the evolution of the kid. But I think it's also gathering parents and kids together to have a great activity, because as you know, the market, the content is fragmented. You watch content all over the place. Kids are watching individually the content or do an activity video game alone. Now it's all about, I mean, us at TFO, it's all about be together. And I think AR can have the potential, not maybe now, but maybe very much in the future, to be together and rassembler.
I also think it's like any new thing. I think, you know, we're just understanding now what AR can do. Like, you know, years and years ago, television was evil and people probably wouldn't let their kids watch it. So now this is all getting better, and yes, it has a long way to go. Yes. I think it's just about that conversation with consumer and with creators to be able to, understand what the newness of it and what that relationship is for parents.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to be introducing a sort of Luddite element to the conversation. It's just that supervision is a disruptor in itself when you're trying to entertain people.
Well, yeah, it was like sorry to interrupt you. Someone from the CSA, the France's TV watchdog, at MIP Junior, who said that kids under 3 shouldn't have screens, and apparently lots of people went, I mean, there is a need for guidelines and for being really careful. We do need to move on, though, and it's a related topic that you've chosen, Lisa. It's mobile video. This made me think of Snapchat, which does a lot of AR as well. So you have Snapchat filters where you make it, you're looking through the Snapchat, and a little dancing character appears in front of you. Do you think there's lots of, and then Snapchat said they're doing a joint venture with NBC to create content specifically for Snapchat. Do you think that's just a sort of show-offy fad, or do you think that's going to be something that's going to really take hold permanently, Lisa?
I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of teenagers in the last year, and the more and more I do, the more I see how much they're consuming video on their phones. So for years I've hoped that mobile video was going to be something more than it is, and I think finally, I think it will be. I was really excited about Sean's conversation of, you know, you've got such a powerhouse like NBC, and then you've got Snapchat and their learnings of the last year of their non-scripted, and how they're going to use that to have a studio and engage top writers and top creators to make hopefully something that's not a short version of television formats. Which I think is what needs to happen. I also thought it was interesting how the content's not going to be on and available the whole time. It's going to disappear in one shape or form like a lot of Snapchat content, which brings an old style of programming, I guess, because you'd have to watch TV and then, you know, have to make sure you saw that sporting show or drama show before you could actually record it. So I thought that was interesting, and I think it's a necessary point of difference you need in, you know, in another content platform. And I also like the responsiveness of it. I like the fact that they're going to be creating these dramas or content, listen or understand how their audience consumes it and respond to it. Because I think the more and more you build relationships with your audience, the more chance you've got of this brand surviving and being ongoing. I also think we were speaking earlier about dramas being difficult to make. Even though these pieces are going to be shorter, they're still going to have their challenges because they're new, they're in a market that there's so even more choices for audiences to get. So I don't think we should underestimate that even though they're digital, they're still going to be challenging. But I'm really excited about the potential groups of creatives that are making this stuff.
Well, and I think it's just an extension of the IP. It's all about building the brand and just helping all the brands of the IP.
I also think he said we're going to be complementary to television, and I think that was really good because I think sometimes I go to markets like this and there's people that are looking for the platform that's going to save all platforms. Is it going to be VR? Is it going to be television? And I think we've got to really let go of that and be, you know, and just understand that there's going to be some stories that are better be told than others. Like he said, he was like, no, like a long ongoing drama is probably not going to work. A telenovela, and I personally like telenovelas, would be probably a better story. And I also like how their conversations were. This is like definitely what we're going to do. We're going to try this. We're going to learn from it, and we're going to, like I guess, you know, coming up with an app, understand, adjust, and see how we go.
Yeah, there was a great. I thought there was a great attitude to it. It wasn't Snapchat is the new TV. They could have come across all bravado like that, but I think their approach was a lot more humble.
If I may, I'm sorry. Did you want to step in?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, jump in. Yeah, the other side of the story. Absolutely need to know the fact that, of course, there's this huge video shift coming to platforms or to social media. But the reason why they're so much interested in video content, either it could be shows, dramas, news, whatever it is, even it's the same reason why Facebook is doing this move with the Watch platform, is because platforms and social media want you captive more and more on their own platform. They need you to stay active and engaged on their platform of their own. And video is such a powerful tool to do so. So once you actually turn users into viewers, you win.
I just want to make the point about story, because I think we heard in multiple keynotes, we heard Vivendi's Delport talk about making content for the screen, not for transferring TV. We heard the same from Discovery's Zaslav. And what I found interesting about the Snapchat was when they talked about condensing stories and using things like split screen. Yep. And it almost reminded me of a stockbroker with his 6 screens absorbing information, condensing it into a 4-minute format on a mobile screen with 3 splits in it, all with different information, I think is a fascinating development in storytelling.
Absolutely, and text and zooms and filters and sort of, they were saying don't hang about, get straight to the point. That's what YouTube have been saying for years, but it's It's fascinating to think about all these new ways of making content.
Yeah, and especially for kids, even though, you know, social media, a kid has to be 13 in order to join Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook. We're using that at TFO to really get the parents, preschooler parents. We will put little shorts so that they can watch together on Facebook little shorts of the long-length content on our multi-platform broadcaster.
I just hope that the technologists and the creators and the filmmakers all still keep talking and have a development process that considers all their learnings to come up with like ways of telling stories that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, no, just I'm always playing the devil's advocate, but there's also another side when it comes to those OTT or social media or platform shift to video, is the regulation part of it. I mean, they are that close to produce their own content, like Snap branded content or Facebook branded content, like becoming actual producers. Now, that's a story because...
They already are.
Yeah, I know, but that's definitely a different story when it comes to regulation because for so long, they've just been platforms. They had a different status when it comes to regulation. Once you're becoming actually a producer of content, it's definitely, I mean, you're switching to the other side and you're not going to be impelled the very same regulation as you did.
Yeah, because the platforms have always said it's not us,
Absolutely.
It's the users. But now, if someone kills themselves on Facebook Live,
And
which has already
actually,
happened, is Facebook responsible or not?
Absolutely.
Now they're creating content.
Yeah, and it
maybe.
totally actually brings us back to one of the hashtags you passed through. It was the European Film Forum, which is definitely a really open conversation made by the media program, Creative Europe, and the European Commission, so that everyone in this industry have a say when it comes to the next media program, which is the program which is actually responsible for financing, promoting, and distributing European works. And the next media program is taking over from 2020 to 2027. And it's a lot of money and it's a lot of pieces of regulation to cope with. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely a question. And at a time where we're definitely living in a digital single market when it comes to Europe specifically, and that we're seeing broadcasters trying to withdraw from financing the film industry itself, we have actually new platforms, newcomers that, I mean, the European Parliament and the European Commission wants to benefit from and are trying to get them financing a part of this industry. And that's where the quota question comes back. Like, for instance, right now, the European Parliament wants to impel on platform 30% of distribution quotas, when the Commission says, maybe if we go up to 20, it's already, you know, something. But, I mean, still, it's a huge question. It so brings us back to the way that we are now all part of the same ecosystem.
You know, if I may, I just want to add for kids again, the mobile video was even very hot at MIPCOM Junior because it's the first MIPCOM where I didn't see much game component attached to the IP. This year, I've seen a lot of little shorts, again, an extension to the big IP, to the 52:11, and then you have little shorts going with the long series. And I think this year at MIPCOM Junior, we really realized that, yes, the gaming is still real, you know, the big OTT platform with the game is still very much present, but at the same time, content now, they realize, the directors, the producers, that they need short contents to reach those mobile video platforms such as Facebook, Snapchat, and build a brand around it.
So yeah, so everyone needs multi-platform content now. I mean, it's not a nice to have anymore.
It's the first year that I'm green-lighted 2 series, and instead of gaming as a digital component, we are doing vlog on a cat. Because we know that cats is very, you know, kids love that. It's very attracting kids, and they learn a lot from them.
Great. I'm sorry we'll have to move us along so we don't run out of time. So our first trending topic's with 5 speakers, so it's quite a... they've all got lots to say. Guy, your turn. You wanted to talk about the telcos as the new producers. Why?
Well, I think there's a noticeable presence at this market of new producers, and major new producers who are telcos or telco-backed. The front of the Palais has a poster from Movistar Plus, which is a Telefonica company, for The Plague, a new original drama. We've got players like Deutsche Telekom, like Altis, SFR, like Liberty's Entertainment One, all very active at this market in a way that they weren't 1 or 2 years ago. If I think back to my first MIPCOM in the late 90s, there was a similar influx of new players at that time. Every boat, every yacht in the marina was taken over by a .com at that time. They were new buyers of content and pushing for new business models. That did not end well. As you know, in 2002 there was a major crash, but I think this is very different. We're talking about very large, very well-financed companies. And there was another buzzword in the late 90s, and that was vertical integration, and that was about mega mergers between big studios and big infrastructure owners. And I think what's different this time is that the big telcos, the big infrastructure owners, have decided to invest themselves. And so they're developing new studios, new distribution entities, and new opportunities for the development of very high-budget drama. And I think that's a very exciting new trend.
Remind us how much Telefonica are investing through Movistar.
So Telefonica, this year, I believe they're doing 6 dramas, 70 million, and they'll be doing 10 dramas a year from next year going forward. And there's a similar level of investment being pegged by many of the major telcos. I think Deutsche Telekom said 6 or 7. And Altis Studio is already very active.
It's huge. But how do you said it's different from the last time, so why do you think this bubble isn't going to burst this time?
I guess the companies are very different. In a way, they're old school, they're large, they're established, they have another business which produces their core revenue. They're not driven by a ridiculously inflated stock price, or their ability to spend is not driven by an inflated stock price. So we've got stable, large companies investing heavily in creating effectively new studios and new distribution.
What do you think is the motivation behind it? Is it simply, like triple play, if we get them one way, we get them another way? Or?
No, it's absolutely about differentiation in a very competitive TV market. All of these players' businesses, telco, mobile, fixed line telephony, is in decline. Television is the holy grail for them because it's one of the few businesses where ARPU, average revenue you get per customer, goes up every year, not down. And it's growing very strongly for them. Their revenue split is now about, globally, in the telecoms business, already at about 30% from the TV industry. So it's a very significant business. Netflix has shown you need the competitive distinction that original production gives you. And actually, it's quite cost-effective when you have a pan-regional footprint, as many of them do, and you need the rights. You need to exploit the rights in 5, 10, 15 markets. Own production actually becomes, even though it's highly expensive, actually becomes quite cost-effective.
So where do you think that trend's going to go next? Sort of beyond to other companies than telcos, or maybe everyone's going to be looking at AT&T quite closely?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the old school mega mergers that works in the US market, has very unique characteristics. I think it's interesting that the AT&T Time Warner.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think that, it's the European telcos in particular who are driving their own investment, and it makes perfect sense. In a way, players like Sky in the UK, they weren't investing in originals 5 years ago, and now they're a major player. So it's anyone in the pan-regional pay TV space, be they a over-the-top SVOD or a traditional player or a telco, and I think it's a great trend.
Can I add that the telco in Canada are looking at kids' property now because they all know that a kid has a phone by age 6 or 7, average age.
6 or 7
yes,
average.
in Canada and the US, it's about 6 and 7. They have their first phone, smartphone. And actually, I did the investigation this year because we co-produced a TV series with Frima, and it's called a Smart Series. It's Maxi. And we wanted to premiere it with a telco. They're not yet there, but they are heavily looking, especially Telcos, which is a huge telco company in Canada, Bell Media, and Videotron.
So yeah, it's happening everywhere.
It's happening very much now.
Yeah, and it's actually a great trend that you picked, because brings us back to two things to follow. First, the money. Second, the data. The money is definitely...
The data?
Yeah.
Okay.
Money is definitely in the telcos end. Data are too. Because guess what? Once you're my user as a telco, you might also be my viewer, which brings us back to the other trend. But I mean, again, it's all part of the same ecosystem again. And it's also the story that once Jean-Marie Messier, or the history Jean-Marie Messier was trying to make at Vivendi Universal at the time, back in 2003, if I'm not mistaken. What he was trying to do is integrating every single brand of the group to Appleizing itself, like trying to bring this closed ecosystem that could be sustainable just by itself. And that was, I was asking this question to Dominique Delport yesterday about the fact that maybe the only piece missing in this puzzle when it comes to the now Vivendi Havas group was a telco. Guess what? They're looking for one in Italy, I guess.
So on to your theme, your topic.
And actually, it's
Marjorie.
more about a conclusion, which brings all those trends together. The first blurred line I see here coming is more the fact that brands are more and more creating their own creative studios. They want to be able to manage their own storytelling and their own content. And at the same time, content creators are just left in the middle without knowing what to do. So again, it's all about content is king. Maybe storytelling is more of an emperor right now. And platforms, as Katzenberg was putting it a few days ago, platforms are also queen when it comes to putting those trends and content and money together. So we're definitely living at a time which could be quite exciting though, but where every single line is blurred between businesses, between industries, and between the creation process itself. Brings us back also to this question of the digital single market. Like for instance, the European Commissioner for Society, for the Digital Society and Economy, in the morning she can totally talk to Amazon on the e-commerce part of Amazon. In the afternoon, she could talk with Amazon on the studio part of it. So remember that we're definitely living at an era where every single platform, every single stakeholder in this ecosystem could be on one side or on the other. So it can be quite disruptive at first because we don't know who's doing what and who's who. But I mean, you have to be like a chameleon and trying to think as a content creation chameleon. And also, again, follow two things, money and data.
Okay, so it goes both ways. Brands doing content and then content companies like National Geographic, they're having to think about themselves as a brand and how recognizable is their brand by consumers and how do they stay true to that brand. That was a big point of the keynote. And
again, the reason also why video and specifically shows are the most powerful to do so is just because once you're creating shows like dramas, like more series, you're actually able to manage your own chronology, which you can't do when you're producing films. Because
what do you mean by your chronology?
There's this huge debate about trying to rephrase or rethink about the media chronology when it comes to the film industry. And it's always really difficult to try to understand every single point from every single, again, stakeholder in this industry, because some of them want to shorten the windows when the film is going to be released in theater. The other one wants to be able to have the content way more sooner on platforms and everything. But the thing at the end of the day that when you're producing dramas, you're managing your own chronology. You don't rely on the other part of the ecosystem to put it either on television, online, on smart devices, on platforms.
Yeah, it's like in France, you have to wait for 3 years before you can put your film
Absolutely.
on Netflix, for example. So
And
if you're what you're saying is if you're controlling everything, you're controlling the timing as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and again, blurred lines is also about the fact when it comes to this different controversial debate about the media chronology, is also the fact that when you actually own the content, you can do everything, and it's always you always have to link it to the regulation side of it, to the financing side of it, and to the data. And when I'm saying data, I'm also talking about the audience. Once you have the data, you are able to actually more focus, more closely, and pay better attention to what your audience is, actually. And so you're also able to better serve it, just because you've been learning from it.
Except if your audience is under 3, you're not allowed to talk to them. If that's all you wanted to say about your topic, Marjorie, maybe we've only got a very little time left for...
It's more like a, something that can sum up every single trend than anything. I mean, again, we're at a time where every single line of this business is blurred, so try to make the most of it.
Yes, all sorts of opportunities. I was just trying to leave a tiny bit of time at the end for if there are any questions in the room for any of our speakers. Can't see very well. Anyone? No? Okay. Don't be shy. Yeah, we can see you now.
They're all too tired.
They've made it this far. Well done for making it this far.
Oh, hey. It's very sneaky. I suppose for me, when we were talking right back at the beginning, when we were talking about the kids' content with augmented reality, one of the things that we found is the kids are really pushing us to go further. Like, it's all well and good sort of saying, once we sort of get into this technology and learn about it more and all that sort of stuff, I think the kids are going to be the ones that are really driving that progress and pushing it faster than perhaps we can even keep up with. Because we work with children in Australia, and all of them are just crazy good at this stuff, creating their own little movies using things that we really probably think, oh, this isn't at the point where we can make great content with it yet because we need to be able to do this, this, this. They'll work with whatever they've got. So if it can.
Sorry, wait. What's your question?
My question is, we say is the kids' perspective in the development process being looked at all?
Yeah.
I mean,
it should be
definitely.
Could I augment that question very quickly? What was learned from Pokemon Go? Did that teach anyone how to get out the house?
And
yeah.
the parents,
but did it teach people
parents
how to...
are really happy about that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just to get out from the home. Pokemon Go, I think, was very successful in the sense that my kids were outside having fun, play as I was 8 years old, in Paris, and play outside. Just that, I think it's a big success. And let me just tell you, yes, we are listening very much to the kids. Always, we have focus group. We know what they want, and I agree with you. I think if we can give them the right tool to be the right producers, they can be kids producer, and that's what we're doing right now with a lot of app. We're giving them the opportunity to tell us a story.
I think it's also ongoing education for the parents too. Yes. Like, I think, sometimes we can put ourselves on a pedestal and go, yes, we know better. But these, even the teens, let alone the kids, have grown up with this source of information. And so it's ongoing on for both sides.
Yeah, I'm glad. Many parents understand Snapchat, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm certainly glad you brought up Pokemon Go, because in Australia, the infrastructure for it sort of let the game down. And the kids were very, very quick on social media to spread that word, and it died very quickly in Australia because of that inability to keep up with the actual users.
Okay. Oh.
Hello, I'm Maria from Sweden and Bulgaria. I'm a producer of kids content. I actually have two questions. One is about marketing, how big marketing role is for content, for how big it gets. And the other thing is about the diversity thing. And everyone is talking, placing, for example, more women in the main role. So, but how about making the female roles more goofy and being able to do with them more? Because obviously when you put a guy in a role, you can do more with the character, while you're more careful with a female role.
That was that came out. Oh, I apologise. Sorry, that came out with Catherine Zeta-Jones's appearance here, because she was partly talking about. She was speaking at the Women in Global Entertainment Power Lunch on the broader issue of women in the industry, but she brought a film with her, Cocaine Godmother, and it was a woman's role like you've never seen. She was evil, totally amoral, a murderer. And Catherine was saying to anyone who would listen, please, more roles like this. She's not just there as a love interest; she's there as a horror. You can hate her, which is really
and if
interesting.
the story makes sense, yes. We're getting away from stereotype a lot in kids' content, and I'm so happy because even my kids were saying 5 years ago, how come boys are always described dumb and slow, and girls are very smart, which is great, and talented, but boys are always, and I have to see the pattern even in commercial. The boys, the kids, the boy kids and the guys are always described as slow and dumb, and and the girls more than ever. Yeah, and my kids were saying, well, I would love to be smart and I would love to be represented as dynamic and a get-go, but it's always the girls who have that part. So we're trying to really work against those stereotypes and make it so that kids can identify themselves on each characters in our contents.
And your question about marketing
it was
was
about marketing. Is like how big role marketing plays in how big a content gets.
Okay.
And how much money you pour into it to make it famous.
Maybe that's a question for Lisa.
Oh, I think it should be as big as it can afford to be.
Right.
I think there's the question marketing.
I think it was what proportion of your budget should go into
right.
marketing.
Promoting yourself at the conference. Oh God, sorry. I thought you meant about your show or your concept.
Yeah, that's what you meant, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. How much marketing you need to do?
Well, for example, with TFO, when we have a launch, we launch our fall season on all of our multi-platform, because again, I think talking about broadcasting is obsolete. We are not a broadcaster anymore, I'm sorry to say. We are content provider. We are digital platform editor. I think representing ourselves as a broadcaster is totally obsolete. And it's very disruptive for producers and content providers as well. So when we launch our new fall season, we use like crazy social media. We were targeting the parents, and we are a public broadcaster, don't forget that. So we work with tiny little budget from the Ministry of Education. But we were there on the multi-platform, on the social media and on YouTube. And I think you can make it happen.
What you're implying is at relatively low cost. If you're
low cost, right. Yeah, we're public, so we're low cost. It's the taxpayer. The taxpayer are paying me to be here. Okay, so we need to, the answer to them is to make a big splash with little money, and the beauty is social media is helping us a lot.
The storytelling should be in your marketing for the project that you're launching or realizing. It should be an absolutely considered part of the whole project. Marketeers and the content creators should work more together because that's the way the audience see it all coming at them.
Great.
Thank you.
No problem. We're going to have to wrap it up there. We've gone over time. Thank you very much for staying with us to the bitter end. And you can catch up with all of our content on MIPCOM.com, on MIP blog. in the MIPCOM Daily News. There's on the YouTube channel all our conference videos. We've spoilt for choice. So enjoy, have a safe journey back, and hope to see you at MIPTV next April. And thank you very much, most importantly. How rude of me to all our speakers.